Hi, it is video 4 in the third series of Corel Painter 2023 Step by Step. All right, so we've been talking about selections and a new enhanced selection where we can do a color selection using brushes, which is pretty interesting. So I want to continue with that and talk a little bit more about selection brushes. So if I come over here and click on the selection panel, and we look at the selection brushes, I want to call your attention to one thing that I didn't talk about in the last video that I meant to. There are 4 brushes that have the word color in their name. Those brushes are set up as to use enhanced color enhanced color selection. If you look up here, notice that with this hard brush, enhanced color selection is not being used. But if I go color hard, then enhanced color selection pops into place. So you can use those 4 brushes to select color using the brush, and you don't have to worry about changing the brushes. But selections with a brush are so cool that I think it's a good idea to let's review these brushes slightly. So I'm going to go to the first one called Soft. I'm going to hit Reset, and I'm just going to paint with this brush. And so if I paint, I had a bit of stuff on there to begin with, so I'm paint like that, and I have it leaves a selection. Now I'm not painting on a painting, so we're just going to be selecting this time. Now if you'll notice, when I painted the first one and then the second one, they stayed together. That's because the mode is on this brush is set to add to selection. And you can do that up here in the mode. You can make a new selection or subtract from selection, or use 3 options here: add to selection alpha blend, add to selection glazing. You can also do that in your advanced brush controls. So let's go over here and look at the advanced brush controls, and we're going to go to the general brush controls, which, remember, I've told you is the stuff I use the most. Now, in order to do a selection brush, we'd already discovered, I think, I don't remember, that circular, computer circular, single pixel, static bristle, and captured and erase all are the only ones that are set up to be able to use color selection. Now, to enable this, this color selection that's up here, if you use any of the others, you can still probably do a selection, but you can't use that color. I think that's only going to be on these first ones. But let me check that just to make sure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the dab type to camel hair. And then, all right, so now that makes the method goes out. So that means really the only brushes that can use selection are circular, computer circular, single pixel, captured, and I need to select one, which I'm not going to do, and static bristle, erase all. Okay, erase all doesn't. All right, so erase is not going to allow us to do a selection. See, I don't remember all these either. Okay, so that's the first thing we can do with our base brush, is we can change the dab type. Now I'm going to just say single here, but there are probably some other stroke types that we can use, but I'm just going to stay with single for the moment. Then what makes it a selection brush is the method. And you have a whole bunch of methods, but as long as you have selection, you're okay. And then the subcategory is new selection, add to selection alpha blend, add to selection glazing, and subtract. So if I change this to new selection and I paint with it, I get a selection. But the minute I start painting with a new one, the old one goes away. So a lot of times most people would probably use add to selection, because that would allow you to paint one and then paint another one, and the first selection stays. So if you were, making multiple strokes to create a shape or a selection, you would want to add to the selection so that when you picked up your brush and started again, you wouldn't lose that selection. All right, so we've got just a basic brush here. Now, the rest of the things up here all have to do with this brush, and this is the property bar, the brush property bar. And so anytime you select a brush, this property bar is going to change, and it's your best clue to what you can change with your brush. Now, I'm working with a 100 pixel image, canvas. I don't know. I couldn't think of what to call that. So this 80 size pixel is pretty large. But before I go there, let me go back to circular. And I'm going to change the brush to hard at the moment, and I'm going to reset. And the reason I wanted to do that, and it's okay that I add to selection glazing and so forth. The reason I wanted to do that is I wanted to show you how these brushes work. Notice that you see this little dot, 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 dot. It's not a smooth movement. That's because with dabs, the brush stroke is made by putting down a dab, putting down another one that's right close to, I'll tell you what, let's turn on that. All right, so the next one would be a little closer, 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 that kind of thing. And that would give you your stroke, where some of the other strokes are more like actual paint. They just render it as it goes down. So, working with these brushes, the spacing of your dab, how your dab goes down, can be very important. And we'll look at that in a second. The other thing is the shape of the brush. Now, I went back to the soft brush, and if I come to shape, which shows the dab options, the shape is a pointed profile. So that means that as I paint, I'm painting in the center. I'm getting a little profile, and on the sides, it drops off. And so if I'm painting very lightly, I'm not going to get all the way out to the edge. It's going to be kind of a soft edge there. If I change that to, say, this one, then I'm going to get something that's closer to the hard brushes, and you see how it's adding those circles one at a time, okay? So let's leave it there, because that'll help me show something else. Now, let's come over to size, and I'm going to hit the fly out for the size panel. Now, if you'll remember the very first, when I set my system up, I set it up for a palette drawer to be size, angle, and spacing. And this is the spacing, and that soft brush is set up with a 40% spacing. So to change that distance, if I look at this down here, if I can get it up and make it stay, the distance between the brush dabs and the stroke, if it's smaller numbers are going to be closer together, larger numbers further apart. So if I were to move the spacing down to, let's go to 5 or 6%, you see I'm going to get a much smoother stroke because it's laying down those dabs one at a time. Okay, so I would probably need to change the spacing. Now, min spacing, I can also change it as well. Let's see what I want to do next with this. Well, while I've got this open, I'm going to look at the angle. I can squeeze the angle. Remember, it was a circle. I'm taking it down to 15 or 16%. Now the brush shape is a, like a flat brush. It's from side to side. Now, one thing I want to do, though, is I can change the expression, and if I change it to rotation, that means my barrel is going to rotate. But for it to notice that I'm not getting a thin line or whatever, I can't paint in that direction and get a thin line. That's because I need to change the angle range. And I want to change that all the way up to 360. All right. The angle step needs to be about 6 because if it's 0, you're not going to have enough memory. So it needs to be about 6. And that means that it's as I turn the brush around, it's skipping about 6%. Now you can play with 3 and 5 and 10 or whatever to find the one that works for you. The lower the number, the slower the brush. But once I set that 360 and the 6% up, now I can paint with the brush like a traditional brush. It's like a flat brush. Okay. Now see how it goes as it goes around. I get those kind of little lines. Well, that's part of the angle step. But you can also, it depends on how much you want to squeeze it. See, if I squeeze it at about 40%, it's kind of a little bit more like a filbert would be. Okay? All right, so we've talked a little bit about the general, and we've talked about squeeze and spacing, and it's been about 13 minutes, so I want to stop the video at this point, and we'll come back and talk a little bit more about selection brushes in the next video. All right, talk to you later. Bye-bye.